Hello again, MangaMatt here with a manga update, the March manga update. Let's roll into it. Not waste any time here. We got Captain Ken Volume 2, which I read Volume 1 a little while ago. But this is the other half of that Tezuka series. It's a lot like a kind of Wild West story with Ken being kind of like a lone hero trying to restore some order to the otherwise wild and untamed landscape of Mars. There's also some cool kind of fighting with playing up the whole anti-gravity thing. And then there's even kind of a neat twist in the end about the true identity of who Ken actually is. I thought it was a fairly kind of interesting way for the series, for this particular little adventure to end. Definitely, if you're a big fan of Tezuka and kind of his more actiony, adventure-y kind of series, this is a lot of fun to pick up. I recommend it. Then next up, we got Volume 1 of Kurogane, which is series that's very similar in ways, I guess, to like Dororo, another Tezuka series. Essentially, it's the story of a very skilled sort of swordsman bandit named who is named Djinn Tetsu, and he was sort of a revered kind of fighter, and then he winds up getting killed by and then mauled by several dogs, and a man finds him and manages to put the guy back together again using mostly mechanical parts, and then also giving him this sort of enchanted sword that allows him to sort of talk. The sword talks for him, and from then on, Djinn Tetsu just basically goes and does various kind of odd job adventures for people, and they're very like self-contained short little stories, and I thought it was an interesting idea, and it's a pretty fun series. It's also by K Tome, who also did Lament of the Lamb, which I also got and read, and really enjoyed that. Next up, somebody was mentioning in one of the comments one time this manga, and so I saw it cheap, picked it up, and read it. It's Twilight of the Dark Master, which is apparently it's one of these sort of, I guess you call it urban fantasy. You have this sort of modern-y kind of gothic series. It's in some ways it's kind of like The Crow, I guess, because you have a lot of these criminal bosses who are trying to run things, and their main opposition is this one lone character who has a beyond normal supernatural abilities, and again it's in a weird kind of future where again the main hero, I guess, is kind of this sort of like vampiristic, but also has enhanced abilities. I don't know, the story really didn't get to me. It felt very kind of generic-y. The main character seemed a little too overpowered. I was hoping for it to like start to really pick up and get sort of better, but it kind of didn't by the end. Sorry for I know this is at least somebody's favorite out there, and I can't really say much for it. There's stuff I like that I know there's a lot of people out there that don't like. So I mean, hey, you just gotta try it. That's all you can do sometimes. Then next up here, some newer ones that I was very much looking forward to. Franken Fran. This is a 2-in-1 that 7 Seas Entertainment is putting out. There was 8 volumes total, so this is the first chunk. And these are absolutely wonderful. I've been waiting to find something, that's just like this kind of genre-y, kind of fun sort of volume series like this. And they're all very kind of Tales from the Crypt kind of series. Like Fran, sort of this weird, demented kind of mad scientist doctor, and she'll just sort of take on any job that people give her. Like, a girl wants to look prettier, so she'll make her look prettier, but it'll be some weird, disturbing kind of thing that she did to make it happen, and then there's some kind of a Tales from the Crypt kind of twist at the end of it. And overall, if you're a big fan of horror, of a very kind of over the top crazy horror, like in Goosebumps or Tales from the Crypt, highly recommend it. And especially there's a good amount of humor in it too, as Fran is she has kind of this weird kind of Valley Girl sort of sound to her. She's like, what? You mean that people don't like this? Oh, come on. Kind of like she's very kind of airheaded. It's absolutely fun to check out with her. Then next up here we get New Lone Wolf and Cub Volume 7, which features this sort of that I'm trying to remember her name. Yeah, Togo comes across more ninja assassins he's trying to fight, and especially this one woman in here, who I swear to God, her name is Mia Jovovich. It's literally the most odd name that I can't imagine how Kazuo Koike would just so happen to name uh like this one person this name, just for the sake of naming a character, any kind. Could have named her anything. Names her Mia Jovovich. So I don't know if that's because maybe he was like a really big fan of the Fifth Element or something, or what. But it's like, who names their characters that? It's too much. It can't be a coincidence, is what I'm saying. It's that's like the only thing that really stuck out to me from this volume, is just that odd kind of name like that. Other than that, I can't really say much for it. Just that again, this he finds her, and that at first they kind of are at odds, and then they kind of become best buds or something. I don't know what to really what else can I really say? I wish that I could remember more of these new Lone Wolf and Cub stories, but I mean, yeah, Mira Jovovich, like it's right there. I wouldn't believe it if I didn't see it. I don't know if that's really like the name that they use in the original Japanese, or if maybe like they just slapped that name on there for something for the English version, or maybe like there's just something significant about that name. I wish that like I need to reread like all of the new Lone Wolf and Cub volumes just all together once they're finally collected. I'm trying to think if like this actually was already finished or what. Let's see, next up, Assassination Classroom Volume 8, which after Kuro Sensei has been turned into sort of his indestructible little ball mode, the kids now have to go and try and track down the main bad guy to figure out what's really been going on the island, and how to neutralize the threat and get off. Overall, it's very cool volume here, with more showcasing what the kids can do now after having been trained under Kuro Sensei, and Kuro Sensei himself being relatively useless during this portion. It was a lot of fun. I really liked it. Then next up, Food Wars Volume 10, which I thoroughly enjoyed. This with kind of finding out about Subaru Mimasaka, who's kind of this guy whose main objective is not to actually do really well with his cooking, but instead his whole technique is to actually figure out what his opponent is going to cook, and then he cooks an identical dish to it, but with minor tweaks to actually make his taste better than his opponent's, and only doing like just the bare minimum to just get better, like very vindictive kind of way of doing it. It just makes for a really great villain to just hate. Really neat and really like it a lot. Especially can't wait for the next volume where he's gonna face off against Soma, and Subaru's gonna face off against Soma and figure out like how to beat him just using beef stew. That's gonna be the main dish. So I'm always interested when it's something simple like that. Let's see. Next up, Giganto Maxia. Giganto Maxia, which this is the Kentaro Miura standalone story that he'd been working on that has more or less taken his time away from, I guess, more Berserk. This is kind of like a post-apocalyptic story with sort of this wrestler guy, and he comes across this small group of people in the desert that live with these giant insects, and then they find out that this other group is gonna come in and wipe out that tribe, and so the wrestler guy with his little girl companion, they decide to help fight back against the oppressors. And it's I went into this manga with absolutely knowing nothing about the plot or anything, and I also, for just a little one and done short little volume like this, I thought it was really fun. If you're a big fan of like big action stories, it's got some cool action in there. Also again, Miura's artwork is always fantastic. He does a ton of neat details. He also does some fun little world building with kind of how these people have kind of lived their lives, and how they've incorporated their lives with that of their insects. And think it's a lot of fun, especially if you like a lot of that post-apocalyptic sort of odd fantasy kind of stuff. And I wish he was doing more Berserk though, so you take what you get. Then this Spirit of Wonder by Kenji Tsuruda, who Kenji Tsuruda is going to be, some more of his stuff is going to get translated later this year, so I saw this online and I decided to pick it up. This is sort of another fun little kind of one and done series, focusing on a girl named Miss China who runs this sort of a bar and inn, and has two attendants who live upstairs that both do kind of weird science experiments, and the whole thing takes place during like kind of the 1800s, kind of like the late Victorian era. And they come up with all kinds of weird inventions, like a machine that allows you to see the moon up close, and another machine that allows you to teleport things, and it's all kind of done in this sort of old-timey sort of way, and it's a lot of fun. The only thing that might be a problem is Miss China does sort of talk in that kind of broken Asian English kind of way, so it's one of those things that it's like I don't know if I really see it as much of a problem, or if it's kind of just one of those things that's like of the times, or if it's it's one of those things like you can't ever tell if people find that offensive still or not. You know, the stereotype of the Asian owner who doesn't speak perfect English. Heck, I don't even know if like something like shampoo from Ranma One Half, if that's not, you know, stereotyped nowadays, if that's even still, people are less tolerant of that or what. But again, you know, otherwise, still, it's a lot of fun. I think it's a really neat little story, and the artwork is, of course, gorgeous. It reminds me a lot of what you call of what's his name, Hiroaki Samura, you know, who did Blade of the Immortal. Lots of action and very energetic. Yeah, I also liked at the end there was an interview with him talking about what kind of things inspired him, and he actually said that he was inspired a lot by what's his name, who did Saber Cat by Yokinobu Hoshino, which I actually have Saber Cat, which is actually a really fun sci-fi manga that he did, and then he later did 1001 Space Space Odyssey. Another new one that's recently come over here that I really enjoy, Princess Jellyfish. Now, this is kind of interesting because I had actually seen this series before. You know, a friend was showing it one time at an anime club thing that I was at for a little while, and initially I really just like, I don't know what it was, but I just was not in the right frame of mind to really enjoy Princess Jellyfish. But you know, of course, that was years ago, and then my tastes have since, you know, changed. Like that was maybe like 6 or 7 years ago, I think, and you know, my tastes have changed and evolved over time, and so, you know, a few weeks ago I went and revisited, you know, Princess Jellyfish, rereading it again, and I absolutely love this series. This is, you know, the first 2 volumes in here. You've got her name's Tsukimi Kurashida, and she's this sort of very nerdy girl in her 30s that really loves jellyfish. She just loves drawing jellyfish, and lives in this little domicile, this little apartment complex with these 4 other girls who are also all very nerdy and eclectic, and you know, it's sort of jokingly referred to as like the nunnery because no men are allowed to live in this one apartment complex that's been, I guess, like rent controlled for years and years, and you know, all this changes when she comes across a woman who is so fancy and gorgeous that, you know, she becomes very nervous, and then finds out that said gorgeous woman is actually a man dressing like a woman, and then on top of that, that this cross-dressing man's father is heading a rezoning project to actually tear down their apartment to build newer apartments, and so now the girls have to kind of band together with the help from the cross-dressing man to sort of save their little nunnery, and it's just very fun. I love the artwork. I love how the girls interact with each other. It's all very fun and quirky, and I really love it a lot. It's probably going to be easily one of my top favorite new series to pick up and read for this year. I think there were only like 18 volumes, so 5 more volumes to go for it. Then let's see here. We get a double heaping dose of Master Keaton here with volumes 5 and volume 6. You know, again, I can't really say much for what happens in both of these, but I will say that they're just absolutely delightful. Let's see. This does bring to question exactly. I wonder. I was trying to see if maybe this little embroidery on on the covers did anything for figuring out if they make any kind of map on the back, because you see it's this embroidery thing. Oh well, maybe I'll see once it all gets translated and brought over if it makes anything. But anyway, both volumes wonderful. Again, it's more Master Keaton. If you don't know how I feel about the series by now, I mean, it's fun kind of detective-y, action-y kind of series, like you might find on sort of like, you know, early afternoon on like a cable show, like MacGyver. If you love MacGyver, you love Master Keaton. It's basically the same kind of thing. Next up, One Piece, Volume 77, with a nice chunk devoted at the beginning for the backstory of Trafalgar Law and him getting the op fruit, and sort of why it's a big deal that he has the op fruit, and then also some more fighting with all of Doflamingo's henchmen versus the Straw Hat Gang. Overall, a lot of big fights, and then especially with this volume ending with Luffy finally entering the fray against Doflamingo himself. Then next up, Tsubasa, World Chronicle, Volume 1, which again features the Tsubasa gang once more going and searching brand new worlds and stuff. And again, once again, Clamp seemingly just shifting gears again from one series to another. It'd be really nice if Clamp would just stick with a series and then finish it. It's not like they don't have 3 or 4 series they could be working on to try and finish. Maybe, I don't know if they're done with Holic Ray. Maybe they are. Are they done with Drug and Drop? I don't know. Maybe. Are they done with X? They could be going back and finishing X, one of their longest running ones that they have yet to finish. Or, I don't know, Gate 7. You only went 4 volumes with that and then inexplicably stopped or something. I'm just saying, pick a series and do it. But in any case, if you're a big fan of Tsubasa, then, this is more Tsubasa. Not really much to say about it except, I hope to see maybe some more interesting developments from it. Especially, given that Tsubasa is kind of the unifying theory of all of Clamp's works. Although I have a hard time really even classifying as that, because again, the characters from the other Clamp series that appear in Tsubasa are not the actual ones. But overall, if you were ever a Clamp fan, it's more of that. Let's see. And then Ajin, the Demi-Human, Volume 7, which again features some very interesting fights, especially with them trying to sort of fortify an entire skyscraper building against just one Demi-Human, who's actually like a highly trained, highly skilled Green Beret. So he's not only combat efficient, but he's also now immortal, and he also now has a Demi-Human that sort of just makes him even more deadly. So it's interesting to kind of see the developments of the various characters and how they're gonna fight these beings who are essentially unkillable, and even more so have powers and abilities that they can't even counterattack. Then next up, Osamu Tezuka's Storm Ferry, which this is actually a collection of, I believe, 3 different stories. The first one and the longest one is, of course, Storm Ferry, which plays kind of like a fairy tale about a man who, about a woman who is willing to do anything to make sure her husband comes back safe, and is even willing to sacrifice her own daughter's beauty to do it. Sacrificing it to an old hag, and the old hag, saying that, okay, I'll make sure your husband comes back safe, but my daughter, who would be born ugly, gets your daughter's gorgeous face, and then vice versa. And so the result is the princess is born with a face and has to wear a mask all the time, and the fairy is born with a gorgeous human face, uh, and so some interesting things ensue from that. The princess is captured, and then somebody else wears her mask to pretend to be her, and the fairy tries to right the wrongs, but realizes that it might require her sacrificing her beauty in the process. So it's a lot of fun like that. And then the other stories, one is about a girl who, a little girl who becomes kind of a detective. But the Kokeshi detective agency, which is very kind of it's definitely aimed at a much younger audience. There's not really much detective mystery at play. So it's hard for me to really say that it's that entertaining. And then the other one is a story about the pink angel, which is about this sort of angel that lives in the clouds, and she wants to try and make people's lives better. But there's also other angels up there that live in the clouds that make things terrible for humans. And then that story kind of carries it over to the end. So it's for being a Kickstarter project, I wish I could say this is amazing and a must-have more so than much like a Clockwork Apple or Brave Dan, but it's still just kind of for an anthology. The stories they do present are just, I don't know, okay. Not as seminal as say Princess Knight or something. If some people passed over this one, it's not a must-have for, I would say, for the casual Tezuka fan. And let's see, next up, Dance in the Vampirebund 2, The Scarlet Order Volume 4, which this is the last volume of the Dance in the Vampirebund saga, which it wraps up everything. It explains kind of how the vampires of this world came about. It explains, why everything is the way it is. It's overall, I thought it was a very solid ending to a series. If you're a fan of vampire stuff and you want a bit more intrigue with it, I'd say pick it up if you're okay with kind of the ickiness of Mina essentially having the body of a preteen and also occasionally being naked. So I mean, there's kind of that to go to work over, and if you can't, then I understand. That's definitely something. But otherwise, I thought it was still an interesting and engrossing kind of story, and a great way to end it. Speaking of other series endings, Deadman Wonderland 13, which also ends Deadman Wonderland, and I thought this was also a fine ending to the series. A resolution for the main bad guy, resolution with Ganta and Ganta's relationship with his mom and all that explained, and then his final confrontation with Shiro and all of that together. Definitely gonna probably reread the whole series again and see what my final thoughts about it as a whole would be. But otherwise, I thought it was very decent, especially for only 13 volumes. And then, let's see. Goodnight Punpun, Volume 1, which I was interested to see that this got a, New York Times bestselling manga list, #1 as it came out, which means that there's clearly a lot of love for Inio Asano for a series like this. Series it runs, the way it's written is you have Poon Poon, who's kind of this sort of penguin looking guy, and the way it's drawn is that Poon Poon is drawn, of course, very very simple and caricature like, just a simple little penguin design, and of course everyone and everything around him is drawn regular style. So there's kind of this interesting disconnect of Poon Poon with everything around him, which again, that's kind of an artistic thing of that's supposed to, I guess, help you more readily identify with Poon Poon as a character. because you can then envision yourself as being Punpun, since all of his features and drawing style is very simplistic. It makes it easier for the to be was a vehicle for the audience to imprint themselves onto. But overall, the story of Punpun, he kind of does like a lot of things like kids his age would do. He has trouble fitting in. He kind of gets a girlfriend. He's going through problems at home with his family. He's figuring out kind of what he might want to do with his life, things like that. And it's all very interesting, and has a lot of drama to it. And I enjoy it a lot. I can't wait for the next volumes to come out, and I'm actually glad that this is going to be the longest series that Inio Asano has done, because I've always loved his stuff, all of it. And then finally, last thing, not necessarily a manga, but does include various works by manga artists. This was put out by Humanoids, who, the Humanoids mostly do a lot of European comics, mostly a lot of the works by Alejandro Jodorowsky and others too. But this is called The Tipping Point, which is a collection of various short comics, all with the main theme being the theme being that key moment when that clear split occurs and tips you from one world into another, from one life into a new one in this anthology. And so all these are stories about the tipping point. These include works by John Cassidy, Eddie Campbell, Bob Fingerman, and then also by various mangakas like Taiyo Matsumoto, Naoki Urasawa, Keiichi Koike. The first one here, Taiyo Matsumoto. Just about kids being out and just kind of playing. That's always a fun little thing that he does. And then I think this is a Koike. Naoki Urasawa here apparently a family getting ready for work. The father is going to do a dangerous mission that he'll be gone a long time for. Overall, if you're a big fan of like those anthology comics, and especially this gorgeous hardcover like this, definitely worth picking up, I'd say. Anyway, that's all I got for this manga update, and I'll catch y'all next time. Thanks.